Hi, so I was watching a documentary and it was dealing with a TikTok cult. And it really got under my skin because I was in a cult. And I've never really talked about it, I've only kind of alluded to it. But I think my testimony will help people who are navigating cults, whether they're in one or they're being seduced by cults or they have left their cult and they kind of don't know what to do. I really think my testimony would be beneficial for others to learn and be warned about how to deal with these very real organizations that are out there preying on people's faiths. So I wanted to share a bit of my story, and then in a separate video, I'm going to give a list of signs or traits of a cult. Cults can come in many flavors, as I like to say. Corporations can become cults. You see that in the pyramid schemes. Even jobs can become cults. There's like cult-like behavior in organizations like Target who push for, a culture that they go for, and certain phrases you have to say that connect you. It builds camaraderie, but it can be a cult. The police can be a cult. Gangs are cults. So cults are nothing new. We like to think of these weak-minded people who are weirdos and they go and dance with flower wreaths on their head. And yeah, those are the extreme sides of cults. All cults are extreme in some way because they shape the brain. People who fall for them are not always weak-minded. You have doctors that fall into cults, lawyers, you have people of all walks of life. The commonality between the people who fall is an emptiness, a longing for belonging. It's not anything to do with intelligence or, degrees or even faith, because there are cults that appeal to kind of sensuality and different things like that. But I'm going to be discussing faith-based ones, just to give a preface to that. My experience goes way back before it even became a cult. It was a church. And I'm not going to give the name of the church unless I feel the need to. On my own time, I'll do that, but I don't feel the need to because it's disbanded as far as I understand. But so it's hard for me to talk about the cult because I don't want people to shy away from the truth. And there's a difference between an organization that claims to be the truth and they're skewing it for their own personal reasons and they're mixing it with their own perverseness, and then the truth, which sounds a lot like them because they use the truth, but they taint it with their own little either paganisms, their own whatever concoctions, and that's what a cult kind of becomes. Is when a leader makes it his own and he becomes the god of that cult, but often they mix truth in it to appeal to the masses. Again, I don't want to shy people away from the truth. So my church that I was in stemmed from one of the first Hebrew Israelite congregations in Atlanta. This was before One West. This was before all these crazy Israelite ones that you can see on the corner. When I say crazy, I mean the ones who are cussing people out, the ones who are making people kiss their feet, the ones who are saying rape is okay. That's crazy, and that's what I'm calling crazy. But the true claims of who the Israelites are today on this earth is valid. Historically, archaeologically, I've proven that to myself in my own study, so nobody can take my understanding of who the Israelites are today away. However, your identity should never become idolatrous. You should not worship your identity, and that should not be the door breaker before Yeshua, the Christ, who people call Jesus, or before the gospel. And nobody should be excluded from the gospel. There is a way and an order to Yah and to who his people are and to how salvation was spread and is spread throughout the world. But when it becomes cultic and when it becomes idolatrous, that should never be in place of the truth. And so everybody who knows the difference, I feel, should speak out about it in their own way, in their own time. So I've always been hesitant to talk about the cult because I'm scared that people will be like, all these Hebrew Israelites, X, Y, and Z, which is really what's happening now. You have a lot of cults who are the loudest groups among Hebrew Israelites saying, we're Hebrew Israelites, and now we've become a religion. Now this cultural identity has become a religion. It's like, oh, those are the black Hebrew Israelites. And that was never what it was presented as. This is an ancestry, and we follow the truth and the way of Christ, Yeshua the Christ. We are his body. We don't believe in the Christian church becoming his body and taking over. We believe that we are still very much Christ's body, and that anybody can be partakers of the fruit and the fatness thereof. However, we have been infiltrated and tainted in many ways. I believe there's a lot of COINTELPRO still active today. I believe there's a lot of Masonic influence. But I do want to share my story because I want to speak up for people who are trying to navigate cults, or these camps who have turned into cults, or even cults that aren't even related to Israelites. It might be Christian, it might be other denominations. Cults are dangerous. So I wanted to speak out against that. I have to put my glasses on because my eye gets lazy from all the seizures that I have. So I like keeping the glasses because it doesn't let my eyes work so hard. So put the glasses on. So my cult story started, it's not funny. It's just awkward to talk about to a camera screen, and it's just me looking at myself and getting prepared to share it with people who I don't know and can't see and don't know their reaction. After I dropped out of school, college, I was trying to find myself, and I was working at a herb shop, and I was loving my life. I was young and just exploring the world. Didn't know what I wanted to do career-wise, so I took that time to kind of figure out my passions, and I found out that herbs were my passions. So I was working at this herb shop, and I wanted to go back to my childhood church. My childhood one, like I said before, the elder passed away, and that was always like my center, my home. It was a warm place for me. I believed deeply in what we were raised in. I believed all of the Bible, all of the prophets, all of it. It just gave me hope and comfort. And I wanted to get more involved with my church, but my church was no longer my church. There was a separation. And so my parents were going to one of the separations, and it was a smaller church. And so I started going and trying to get more involved because I wasn't in school, and I just wanted to dedicate my life to Yah. And so I went, and I would get involved. And I wouldn't go consistently because I was kind of going back and forth between my dads and different things. But when I moved down with my mom, I started going consistently, and I started becoming a part of different things, like activities, the choir, set up, cooking, getting on the cooking teams, cleaning up, these things like that. I taught a crochet class. I really enjoyed it for the most part. Like, I really loved it. Everybody was cool. I didn't have no problems at first. It was little things that you didn't really pay attention to that you just thought was regular church behavior, which it is. A lot of it is church behavior. People would say little things. There'd be little beefs among people. But the thing that stood out to me one time the most is, like, one time I went there really early to kind of set up, and a brother was there, and he was setting up the incense, and so I helped him. He said I could help set up the incense. It wasn't in the altar, it wasn't in the, it was just around. And so I went and set up, and then then later the elder came in there, and when he came in there, he went off on me. And I had never seen him go off or angry. I had never been yelled at like that by somebody in church. It was so strange to me. He was like, "Who told you to do that? Who told you to do that? Did nobody tell you to do that?" Like, in my face. Like, it was so crazy. So that was one of the first signs. But I was just like, internalizing everything, overthinking things. Like, I wasn't a very confrontational person. I was very, like I said, insecure, trying to figure things out, but I didn't play about the Bible. And what he was saying after he explained it was that was a very holy, ordained thing to do, was to light incense, and I didn't have no authority and right to do that. Well, if you read the Bible, especially the Old Testament, there were men who were murdered for doing that. So it made sense, it clicked. And so I was like, oh, I'm wrong, oh, I was out of place, and that was that. Looking back, he could have just handled it way better than what he did. He did not have to go off like that. Like, if there's something out of order, you just correct it with love and empathy. You don't just attack somebody. You don't just go off on them like they're a child. Anyway, so there was more signs, but the signs were just favoritism amongst his family, gossiping amongst everybody, nonstop, just kind of beefs, and shaming, public shaming. He would shame people in front of the whole congregation, I included. I did not get missed. One time I had to do a presentation for an open mic where only we were in the open mic, only the congregation was, nobody from the outside. And I had to talk about the products that we had. And I was like stuttering and real nervous in front of the camera. And he was like yelling at me, and it got so awkward and I got tensed, and he was like, smile, you need to smile. And I did this like smile, and he was like, that's real ugly, in front of everybody. And I was just so embarrassed and like just felt so gross. And nobody said nothing. So it was like normal to get shamed. And the more I stayed, the more I internalized things and kind of looked at like I'm the problem. Like he's a righteous priest, an elder, and I'm the one who's not doing things right. I'm too concerned about how I look, and that's why he called me out. He saw that in my spirit type thing. And so it just kind of continued like that. And then anyway, a point came to where he wanted to move the entire congregation to South Carolina. And the thing was, because he was saying the fall of Babylon or America was soon, and that we wanted to be the he-goats before the flock, position ourselves and to put ourselves in a position to be delivered and to be like the first ones, so that we can have an established place where people can come. In my head, I'm thinking land and, kind of like a settlement. I had never heard of this before, and it sounded and reminded me of Acts. And so I was like excited about it. I was like, oh yeah, we're gonna have our own land. I'm gonna look up land, I'm gonna help. I got excited. I was willing to leave everything behind. I didn't think I was like cutting off everybody, but that's what would end up happening for sure. And it was a subtle thing. It wasn't like you stop talking to XYZ. It was like a kind of a little feeding you little things to kind of make sure you cut off everybody. And when we ended up moving there, it was 2 houses, and one was the women and one was the men. And it was a house in a regular neighborhood, like a nice neighborhood, but a neighborhood, not land, not in rural areas. And we just lived in a 5-bedroom, 6-bedroom house with a bunch of women. And then the men lived with a bunch of men and children. The boys would be with the men and the girls would be with the women. And it was just crazy. I had to get rid of my cat, which was I had my cat ever since I was in high school. That cat, if anybody knows me, that cat was my child. I didn't have children. I know this sounds corny, but I had a strong relationship with that cat. Even talking about it now makes me very emotional. But his name was Monster, and I had to get rid of him after they gave me permission to bring him. The woman of the congregation was very set on me not having my cat, and she made sure that I got rid of my cat, and it just broke my heart. But there was many things that happened. I won't go into details about every little thing, but there was a lot of things that added up that you can't see until you're out of it. Hindsight is 20/20. And then understanding the Bible and understanding yourself as a person, it helps. And then understanding what a cult is, because before all that, the elder used to say things like, this ain't no Jim Jones. I didn't know who Jim Jones was. I had no idea who Jim Jones was. And I remember my grandma telling me, she texted me and said, this is some Jim Jones stuff, don't go. And I stopped talking. I was like, oh, they're tripping. They're crazy. Why is she going off when nothing's happening? But they would make sure to say things like, send pictures to your loved ones, let them know you're having a good time, send pictures by the beach. And it was just real weird. But again, it was kind of hammered into us that this was us sacrificing, to be closer to Yah, to give everything up for Yah. One of the verses that they use a lot is Matthew 19:29. He who forsakes houses, lands, father and mother for my sake, that was kind of manipulated and used as justification to cut everybody off in a way where it's like us versus them, they're, And so little things begin to get worse. Families begin to leave, and it got more and more, it got more and more crazy. I can only speak about my personal experiences. I know I was a target of a lot of gossip. A lot of relationships that I made there weren't true, and people didn't really like me and thought I was a snake, thought I was a harlot, thought I was sleeping with people, thought I was pregnant. I was accused of being pregnant because I used to I had hormonal issues, and I would spot a lot, and I was accused of miscarrying. I was accused of stealing people's boyfriends that weren't their boyfriends. I was the snake because I was single, and it wasn't amongst everybody. I had some real solid people there that I still love to this day, that I still am in communication with. The people there, I will say, were not all horrible. Everybody has their flaws. And I also want to say, and I don't want to take away from accountability, because the thing about cults is the leader can only go as far as you allow them. You idolize that person and you refuse to look at your word and to be in relationship with Yah and compare the two. I was inexperienced, but everybody has a responsibility to be in relationship with the true and living God and to read their word on their own and compare it. Because it's not all the pastor's fault. It's not all their fault. It's our fault for not having checks and balances, for nobody calling it out until they left. Then everybody got something to say. No, like, you should stand up for what you need to stand up for at that time when it's happening, especially the men, and the women were going off, but they were kind of being like, shut up, you crazy woman. Like, shut up, you crazy woman. You don't know what you're talking about. You're hormonal. We got the vision. But, yeah, I ended up, a lot of families begin to drop off or get kicked off. We never really knew why completely. There was a sign where some brothers sent a whole email to everybody explaining how our elder was corrupt and just comparing him to different other cult leaders. And I did peep that, but I was like, why didn't they say that when they were here? They must just be mad. I was like really effed up in the head. I was really believing what was going on. I believed, we were in the right position. We were doing the right thing. We were living every day for Yah. We were worshiping, singing. We had a home school, and hold on. Sorry. We were singing, and I loved to sing. I was in the choir. I will say, I learned a lot in the choir. I learned and found my voice. I was worshiping like I never had before. I was leading the children's choir. Those are things I really loved. I loved teaching the girls how to crochet. I loved teaching the youth choir. I loved, the camaraderie that was built, the real family structure. It was just little things that, we were starting to pick up on, and especially when people began to leave, and it was so easily that our family was just broken down and we stopped talking to them, and it hurt, but I was joining the dang bandwagon. I wasn't talking to people. If you left, I wasn't talking to you. Like, it just was what it was. And I just felt like there was a reason you left, And then I'm trying to just kind of summarize it without going too off the course. It was just a lot of beefs. Everybody was kind of tired. It was years passing, like a year passed, and everybody was kind of getting fed up. People were on edge. We had good moments, but there was just always this tension in the air. The classes began to be less about the word, in my opinion, and what it said, and hope and all these things, and it became a bashing session where I would tell what was going on, where he would tell what was going on and the problems that each person had, and to find a moment to call out something that he had been told, because there was a lot of tattling. There was a network of snitches that would run and report to him, and it was like a shameful thing if you didn't go and talk to him frequently. If you didn't go and discuss with him or his wife things that you were dealing with, it was like you were being secretive. So I was encouraged to talk to the woman, to talk to the elder, and I would go talk to her, and she would tell me, well, make sure you're keeping in touch with elder, and so I would go talk to him and tell him things that I'm battling. In my naivety, I was stupid. I shared things that I probably should not have shared. I shared things that I was battling, like lust, and I was battling lust, because I wasn't a virgin going into this, but I had been abstinent for years, but I was just being open with my pastor, and little things would happen, and I didn't peep it. I did not peep it. I never looked at my elder in a wicked way. I never felt like he was looking like that to me or to anybody. I always looked at him like a grandpa, like this holy grandpa, and I even told him that you remind me of my pawpaw. And but one time I remember he gave me a nose ring, not this one. This is my husband. My husband bought me this. This is my husband. He gave me an earring that he said it couldn't fit his ear, or he didn't like it, and hey, can you want to put it in your nose, or you want to use it as a nose ring? And I was like, oh sure, thank you. It was like a real big deal to get gifts from either the mother or the elder. And so I was like, thank you so much, this is nice. And when I got home, my mom was like, why did he give you that? My mom was very outspoken and very like about everything. But she was like, why did he give you that? Oh, and she just kind of clocked it. And then later on that week, he like around Sabbath, he asked, he was like, did you tell mother that I gave you that? And I was like, no. He said, you should have. And I was like, now I felt awkward, because like if I were to get it, I felt like if I were to get it and go and take it to the mother and be like, look at the nose ring he got me. Like, I just felt like that would have been weird. I felt like y'all moved in unison, and I figured I wasn't even thinking about it, honestly. I just was not thinking about it. And a lot of me I was so like taking people at face value and not really peeping. I was not peeping all the scheming and really looking hard enough like I should have. I was very gullible. I was very malleable, easily manipulated, and I was weak-minded. I was very weak-minded. I took what they said as law. I let them get away with a lot of stuff with me, a lot of stuff with my family, that a lot of people who are solid in who they are and who are courageous, I believe, and more rooted would not have. And that's something I regret, because it was a lot of things that I feel like I could have prevented. But like a lot of bullying, or a lot of like, picking on certain people, or, I didn't stand up for people like I feel like I should have. And anyway, so a time came, like this is where I'm just gonna jump to leaving. All of that was going on. A lot of people were leaving. We were down to the few. A time came where the elder approached me about getting a hotel room, because I worked at a bed and breakfast. He approached me about getting a room for me and him. When I told him no, and I'm summarizing the whole thing, I am not going to go into detail with that. It's very, very touchy, but I have how it went down, but I'm going to summarize it. I told him no, and he told me I had to leave. He screamed at me outside when it happened, and basically called me unloyal, said I had to go, said, what do I think? I'm going to choose who I marry. We are all handmaidens. Everybody in that house belongs to him. And if I'm not going to do that, then I need to go. And I cried, and all these brothers were going in the house, walked right past me, just like, minding their business, because I guess I understand the brainwashing of it. You don't know what's going on. You just see another person getting yelled at and she's crying. But I called my stepdad and I told him what happened. I immediately called my mom. She was like, oh, hell no. We actually, like, she was just ready. She was just ready for a reason. And so we were getting ready to leave that night. I went back to the sister's house, and I thought that the mother knew and that he knew, and this was a scheme of theirs. But as I went back home that night, I felt like she didn't know, because things were too normal. She was contacting me about taking care of the parakeets. I was like, Mommy, she don't know. She has no idea. My mom and my stepdad were like talking about what we were going to do, whether we're leaving immediately or not, because it's not, they were just kind of discussing what was going on. And I ended up confronting his wife and telling her what happened. And she has a mixture of so many emotions at that moment, but she ultimately thanked me. She was pissed and shaking and looked like she was going to murder me. But she thanked me, she said, for being woman enough to tell her that. She said, because a lot of women would have did it. I'm like, who? Anyway, but so I left, and she asked me, what do I need to leave? And I said, I don't want to go. She said, what, so you're going to sleep with my husband? I was like, no, that's not what I want. But, I gave up my whole life to live here. Where the hell am I going to go? She said, what do you need to leave? And I said, I need my last month's rent, and I need time to pack my clothes or something, I said. But I know I asked for my last month's rent. She never gave me the last month's rent. When I went to work the next day, because I was going to come home and pack, she began to send me these barrage of text messages accusing me of playing victim, blaming me for tearing her family apart. All these things, I became the reason, you know? And then it comes out that some other things come out, and my stepdad leaves, and my stepdad and my mom make it their decision, we are leaving. So we end up getting kicked out. They throw all of our stuff into the garage. Anybody who got kicked out or left, their shit would get thrown into the garage. Just thrown in a big ass pile. And they would have to come and get it, and nobody would help them. Nobody would pack it. They would just throw the shit in the trash and throw it out. Amongst them packing all my stuff, throwing it in there, they found my books. I have never shied away from the fact that I'm a huge sci-fi anime. I like, that was my genre. So I was a big fan of all the Aragons. I had Aragon, Brissinger. I had all the Aragons, and they have dragon faces on them. Well, I got accused of being a witch because I had a salt lamp. Not a crystal ball, a salt lamp. I had these dragon books, and I don't know what else they found, but I never had no sorcery books. They said I had sorcery books, witchcraft books, and I was practicing spells. That was their excuse for us leaving or not being there the next Sabbath. They told everybody in the congregation that I was a witch and that everybody had been bewitched by me, and that's why everybody left, because I put spells on everybody. And so obviously I was like, hurt. When I tell you the severity of the brainwashing is real. We all entered into such a deep depression and didn't even have time to be depressed because we didn't have nowhere to go. I'm so grateful to Yah that I worked at a bed and breakfast because I was able to sleep there if need be, and my family. But instead, we put our money together and we were sleeping in hotels. We had nowhere to go. I could have went back to Georgia and Atlanta, but in that moment, we had nowhere to go. And so we were sleeping in hotels, and we just were going, week to week, and we started looking for places to stay. And well, I don't know what happened, but the second place we applied to, and I don't know how we got approved, but we got approved for it. All our credit was shit because we had invested a lot of money in like furniture. We put our name in things like furniture for the other house. So our credit was shit because people wouldn't pay on time. And the church, the house would not give proof of residency for the past 2 years. So it was like we never paid rent. It was like we didn't have good credit. I don't know how we got approved. By the grace of the true and living God, that's how we got approved. But we got approved quick, and it was nice. It was so nice. And when we moved there, oh my gosh, we were in such a mental funk and depression because leaving everything you think you know, and you're so in a routine of worship and praise and just culture and family that it's like you've been thrown into a foreign land, like you're just left out to dry and you don't know where you stand with Yah. Because they were saying things like our baptism is null and void, we are not a part of the congregation, we're like a witch, we're damned, we're all these things. So I started questioning myself, we all, I think, were to an extent. But one thing about my stepdad and my mom, they were like, we didn't have no furniture. We didn't have nothing in that little house, but it was ours. And we had the stuff that they threw out. But even then we had rooms. So we had bins. We didn't have furniture and things. So we started waking up very early doing yoga. We didn't know yoga was pagan, but we would do yoga first thing in the morning. We would pray. We would read the Bible. We changed to a vegan diet. We were really trying to just recoup, detox, be healthy, and live for Yah, because we didn't know. We were really scared, but we kept praying to Yah. We kept praying through Yahshua HaMashiach. We kept the Sabbath days. We just walked in a way we never had before without a congregation, in spirit and in truth. And we did that, and it was the most freeing I had ever felt. Like the true healing happened. My stepdad it was at that point, he was like, come on, Shira, you need to do an album. Because I was doing music with the church. Remember, I told you, I love being in the choir. I started playing with rapping in the church. And he was like, you need to do an album. And I was like, no, that's prideful. That's self-absorbed. He was like, you need to do an album. So he started taking me once a week to a studio in South Carolina, and I recorded my whole first album. In like the amount of songs is on there, that's how long it took me to record it. And so that gave us confidence. It was something we all did as a family. We were like this. You know, I was working at this bed and breakfast in Charleston that it was right on the beach. The manager we were really close. I was just cleaning rooms all day, listening to audiobooks, reintegrating with society, because you weren't really talking to people. You didn't have friends like that. I was told if I wanted to go on a date, I needed to be monitored. Like, I was such a whore. And I was not doing nothing there. I didn't have sex I didn't do nothing there. So they were just wrong. And I still get accused of that to this day. People still come in my DMs or come to my page and tell me, from the old congregation, oh, she's a whore, she's this, she got cancer because she's a whore and a liar. Yeah. Okay, let Yahweh be the judge between me and you. And I stand on that. But so, you know, being reintegrated into society, my job really helped with that. And they were stalking us for a while. The mother and the elder of that congregation booked a room at my job just to try to provoke me. But they didn't know how much leadership, how much management how much I was over the place. I was basically running it. So I saw when they booked it. They were trying to probably pop up on me and scare me just being a little cleaner, but I was overseeing everything. So I was able to talk and coordinate with my manager and be off that day. So I ain't never run into them. They would drive by our house and threaten me on the phone because he kept sending us perverse things, and he kept just sending things, just wicked things, and just driving by our house, just staring. We would see them in the store, and it was so awkward. Oh, I remember I ran into the woman in the store, and she was just like, why are y'all still here? Why are y'all still in South Carolina? Mind you, we literally believed here. We moved here believing we're preparing for deliverance. Why would we go back? You know, we didn't think. We believed we're about to be delivered. We weren't doing it. You know, it was just something that she just thought I don't know. But it was a lot. We were harassed during that whole time. And then, even though we were out of the congregation, but finally they stopped, it died down, and I started doing poetry. I started doing open mics. I got in touch with some people. I don't know how I met them. Oh, I reached out to people that I found. I would name drop them, but I just don't want to. But I love these people. I met so many people in poetry in Charleston, and they don't realize how much they helped pull me to normalcy. Nobody really knew what I had just came out of, and it was very healing to go into the poetry scene and be accepted. And I was just talking about, my poems were prophetic. They were talking about what was going to happen, the end of the world. Not prophetic in the sense of I was, not like that, but just more so like talking about prophecies, Isaiah, Jeremiah, the daughter of Babylon. And that was so well received. I thought I was going to be hated. Everybody loved my poetry. They loved how I delivered it. They loved how it was. They gave me opportunities. They kept in touch with me. They invited me places. And I was such a train wreck mentally. People didn't realize I was going back and forth. I was like having breakdowns before I would perform, but I was still being healed by the grace of the Most High. And it really was it was a very interesting experience. It strengthened me a lot. So, and that throughout that whole time, throughout me being in the church, moving to Charleston, I only kept in touch with one person. And he was my best friend since high school. And he's my husband now. So, like, we had kept in touch the whole time. He was one of the few who never let me go, who always wanted to visit me, who just was checking up on me. And we got married. We got married August 2019. And that was like a year or two after I got out of the church. And we had kept talking, and we started dating, and I went down there to visit him, and that's a whole nother story. But I got married and had kids, and that's literally my life. Like, oh my gosh, that cult took up so much of my life. And that's why on the next video, I'm going to give like things to look out for. This was just my testimony. But I'm going to give a list of things to look out for so you don't fall victim to a cult, because they're very subtle, but they can destroy your life. With everything in me, I believe that it is linked to this tumor inside of me. I believe that cult caused me so much emotional trauma And it just gave me such a distrust and paranoia around relationships and around everything in my life, even my confidence, even just overthinking people's introduction to me. Are they plotting against me? Are they giving me a gift to take advantage of me? Oh, do they really talk behind my back? Like constantly. And there's been a lot of healing. That's the thing. I may not seem like I'm healed, but I am so much more healed than I used to be. To be able to talk about this and not cry and not get in such an anger spell is a blessing. And to be at a point where I really don't wish them no harm. Like I wish them everything they deserve. I wish Yah deal with them according to their works, but that he have mercy on them. Because at the end of the day, I don't want nobody burning forever. That's not something I want. I don't want to be like, you gonna burn forever. I'm never like that. Like I wouldn't want that for myself. I don't want that for no one. And I don't want my enemies to wish that on me. And I didn't know I had enemies until I went through that situation. I didn't know how cruel people could be until I dealt with that. And but I hope they repent to this day. I hope they repent. I still keep in touch with some of my sisters from there, and I love them. Y'all know who y'all are. I love y'all so much, that have come out of that, and we've grown. We all have our own families. We all have those scars that have taught us lessons, and it's amazing. But I wish we didn't have to go through that in order to get these lessons. But hey, Yah will work. He works the good out of anything, to those who are called according to his purpose. He's going to chisel you. Even if you go through something and make the wrong decisions, even in your sin and idolizing somebody and putting somebody before him, he still has mercy on you. So I know he has mercy on people who get prideful and puffed up and try to exalt themselves and get lost in the sauce. I know he does. And I wish that on them. I wish them nothing but peace. They still don't like me. I'm sure they hate me. I'm sure if they see this, they're going to text me or try to reach out and cuss me out. Or they may not. I hope not. I hope they move on and be happy and healthy, all that. But I do believe that this tumor is a manifestation of what I've suppressed going through that, because I had suppressed a lot while I was there. I didn't speak like I should have. I didn't express anything. I hid my tears. I sucked a lot of things in. And I do think, cancer, it manifests in areas of your body where you hold trauma or bacteria or sickness. But mine is right here in my brain. And that area particularly deals with your emotional response, your mood, your thinking. It's deep. But anyway, thank you for listening to my testimony. I praise Yah sincerely through Yahshua HaMashiach that he got me through it. I pray that he's not done with me, but that this touches whoever it needs to touch. It encourages those who have been through it, those who were there and still are going through the effects of it, or those who are going through it in their own ways in different camps, cultures, whatever. You don't have to be subject to a wicked person in order to reach the true and living God. Yahshua destroyed the veil, so you don't need an intercessor except for him. You can come to him in truth and in righteousness, and the body is worldwide, and don't forget that. Don't get lost in the excitement and the joy that comes with finding out who you are. It's a beautiful thing to know where you are and to know your cultural ancestry, but don't get lost in that. Don't just drown in that when there's the gospel, when there's this chance at eternal life. You want to be on the right side of that when Yahshua HaMashiach comes back. I believe he's going to come back. I don't care if I look like a nut. I will never renounce my God because of somebody who came in the name of him when they weren't aligning with anything the Bible said. Nothing the Bible speaks for was what they were coming and attacking with. I don't mean the good things that they preach. I mean the falsehoods. Any scripture, any verse can be taken and misquoted and turned and interpreted to what people want it to be. That's why you have to study and show yourself approved, that you may distinguish between the good and the bad, or the right and the wrong, the truth and the lie. Because Satan, he also comes like an angel of light, hoping that you will be allured by him, because he looks like this wise light angel being, and he's Satan, the adversary, seeking to devour you. So I would just warn people and just encourage people to look for the true and living God in the word and in prayer and in spirit, not through brick and mortar. Fellowship is necessary and it's important, but don't hinge your salvation on a teacher, on a flesh and bones man, on a building. You have to have that relationship, and you have to be studying that word, not just Proverbs 31 for women, and not just, thou shalt and thou shalt not. You got to look at the spirit behind that. And that's all I want to say. Hallelujah. Bye.